Hello everyone and welcome to today's edition of the Cheat Meal presented by Deep Fried Draft. My name is Brian Bosarge. Big opening weekend of college football, Labor Day weekend. A lot of games I reviewed. Watched 19 games total. 15 were on the official release schedule there. But you can go back and listen to, download the Bumpers app and listen to the review. That's how we're going to do it. We're going to release the weekly review on Bumpers, the Bumpers.fm app, and the preview and news will come via YouTube. So, without that being said, the NFL, each team cut down from 90 to 53 on their opening day rosters, which meant at least 37 guys had to be cut or IR'd from each team. And because of this, we seem to have a phenomenon that developed where teams, instead of the teams that didn't think a certain player would get to them in the waiver order, basically teams started trading off late round picks, conditional picks, and such of that nature. So we saw a record number of trades over the last weekend, which was fun, but it leads to us having to cover a lot of ground. So let's get right to it. Detroit acquires a 2019 fifth round pick from the San Francisco 49ers. They acquire offensive guard Laken Tomlinson. Tomlinson was a first round pick a few years ago. I wasn't as high on him as the Lions were. Apparently it shows. Another offensive lineman traded. This time Atlanta acquires former second round pick from offensive tackle Ty Sombrello. Denver gets a 2018 fifth round pick. Baltimore acquires offensive lineman Tony Bergstrom from Arizona in exchange for a 2018 seventh round pick. And what was probably the biggest trade of the weekend, or one of the two bigger trades of the weekend, Seattle acquires former All-Pro defensive tackle, former Pro Bowl at least, defensive tackle Sheldon Richardson and a 2018 seventh round pick. In exchange, the Jets receive wide receiver Jermaine Kearse, a 2018 second round pick, and a 2018 seventh. So basically they're going to swap seventh round picks. The Jets get a second Jermaine Kearse in exchange for Sheldon Richardson. Minnesota acquired cornerback Tremaine Brock from Seattle in exchange for a 2018 seventh round pick. Pittsburgh gets a 2018 sixth round pick from the Cleveland Browns in exchange for wide receiver Sammy Coates and a 2019 seventh round pick. Coates basically has speed to burn, speed for days, can't catch a cold. New England gets special teams ace Johnson Botamosi in exchange for a 2019 sixth round pick from Detroit. Dallas acquires cornerback Bene Benwickery from Cincinnati in exchange for a conditional sixth round pick in 2019. The condition is that Benwickery has to be on the Cowboys active game day roster 4 times this year. The Rams acquire tight end Derek Carrier from the Redskins in exchange for a 2018 seventh round pick. The Giants get cornerback Ross Cockrell from the Steelers in exchange for a conditional 2018 draft pick. And in one of the other bigger trades of the weekend, no draft picks involved, but a former first round pick wide receiver Philip Dorsett, another one that I wasn't nearly as high on as the Colts were, in exchange for last year's third round pick quarterback Jacoby Brissett. There is talk that Andrew Luck may miss a minimum of a month. So if that is indeed the case, then you can see why the Colts need to make a move for a quarterback, because Scott Tolzien is, I don't even know how he's sold backup in the league, but here we are. Some college football news to get to. I spoke of it yesterday in the Bumpers podcast, but Florida State quarterback DeAndre Francois tore his patella tendon late in the game against Alabama. The redshirt sophomore will miss the rest of this season. Alabama didn't get out of the game unscathed, but reserve linebacker junior Christian Miller, who has some talent and will probably end up in the league at some point, tore his bicep and he'll miss the rest of the season. An unknown injury at this, or undetermined amount of time, will sideline UMass senior tight end Adam Brenneman. Spoke of Brenneman a week ago in my review from the Hawaii game, where he was a one-man wrecking crew for the Minutemen. But so hopefully he's not going to miss a significant amount of time. Florida senior tight end DeAndre Goolsby is out indefinitely with an unspecified injury. This is per Florida head coach Jim McElwain. Goolsby quote tweeted the statement from McElwain saying that was news to him. So, trouble in Gainesville, I guess, there. And Memphis senior linebacker Jackson Dillon is out for the year after having to have shoulder surgery. Dillon missed most of last year. He's a fringe draftable candidate. He's a good size for a backer, but he will miss this year, and he is a candidate to get a 6th year of eligibility from the NCAA. So, we're 6 minutes into this video now, as we've talked about the trades and reviews and the news. So now let's get into this week's preview. And we've got 11 games. 11 games on the schedule this week. As always, there's room to add more. We'll see what happens. But we're going to start Thursday night. And a game on ESPN at 6:30 p.m. Sam Houston State at Prairie View. During week 0, my goal was to watch Sam Houston against Richmond to see the two quarterbacks battle. They ended up playing last Friday night in what sounded like a complete shootout and a fun game to watch. But so this week we're going to get our first look this season at Sam Houston State senior quarterback Jeremiah Briscoe. So I'm anxious to see him in this game against Prairie View. I don't know of any Prairie View players that are at this point in time NFL prospects. On Friday night, 7 p.m., ESPN2, my hometown of Mobile, Alabama, will see Oklahoma State visit the South Alabama Jaguars. Oklahoma State, we're going to be looking for senior quarterback Mason Rudolph. And he has a just crazy amount of receiving weapons, all seniors. So we'll be on the lookout for number 28, senior receiver James Washington, number 3, senior Marcel Aitman, and number 15, senior Chris Lacey. For South Alabama, their main prospect will be safety Jeremy Reeves. He's a senior. He'll be wearing number 14 for in honor of his injured teammate. He used to wear number 1, but will be wearing 14 for this season. Starting on Saturday, we're going to start at 11 a.m. on ABC. Cincinnati at Michigan. For the Bearcats, look for 2 senior corners, number 13, Grant Coleman, and number 9, Lyndon Stevens. And we're going to see how they handle Michigan junior quarterback Wilton Spate, number 3. Spate looked good last week against Florida, outside of the pick sixes that he threw in the first half, but in the second half he got it together and looked like a competent quarterback. So we'll see how he continues to develop this week against Cincinnati. At 2:30 on ESPN2, it'll be Fresno State at Alabama. Fresno State has had a lack of overall NFL prospects the last couple of years, so I'm anxious to see them get back in the group. They were a very, very good program for many years. So I want to see them get back to relevance at least. Probably not going to be this week against the Tide. The Tide last week handled Florida State thanks to special teams and defense. This week we're going to look at some of their interior offensive linemen, and we're going to see number 71, junior Ross Piersbacher, and their center, number 75, Bradley Bozeman. 2:30 p.m. on ABC, Pitt at Penn State. We saw Penn State last week against Akron. This week we're going to look for their senior linebacker, number 40, Jason Kabinda. He'll be tasked with helping out against Southern Cal transfer and starting quarterback for the Panthers, number 4, Max Brown, and their very athletic junior offensive tackle prospect, number 70, Brian O'Neill. O'Neill had 2 receiving touchdowns last year for Pitt. TCU at Arkansas will be the first game on CBS this year at 2:30. And for TCU, we're going to see if any at all improvements have been made by Kenny Hill, their quarterback, as he looks to throw to number 2 senior wide receiver Taj Williams. For Arkansas, they have a very good quarterback in senior Austin Allen. Has size limitations. Question his hand size, if his hands are anything like his brother Brandon, who were very undersized hands. But we'll see him and our current number 1 center prospect, number 72, the senior Frank Ragnow. 6 p.m. on ESPN, you'll see Auburn at Clemson. And Clemson has a very good defensive line. And they're going to be led by their junior defensive lineman, number 42, Christian Wilkins, and redshirt sophomore, number 99, edge rusher Cleveland Farrell. These guys can get after it. And the guy they're going to be getting after is Auburn redshirt sophomore quarterback Jarrett Stidham. Statistically, Stidham had a solid game against Georgia Southern tonight. He's a transfer from Baylor. And all hopes for Auburn in this game and this season really rest on his right arm. 6 p.m. on ESPN2, South Carolina is at Missouri. South Carolina got decimated through the air last week by Ryan Finley. This week they see Drew Lock, the junior number 3 for Missouri, who tied an SEC record last week with 7 touchdown passes and damn near threw for 600 yards. So, the South Carolina secondary will be tested, and they have 2 solid prospects out there, although last week, Jamarcus King, they talked about his improved strength in the offseason, didn't really show up as NC State sophomore receiver Kelvin Harmon had his way with him for a good bit of the game. But look for number 7, Jamarcus King, the senior, and number 3, corner safety Chris Lamont, who will also return punts for South Carolina. Missouri has a very good receiver and senior number 6, Jamon Moore. At 9:30 p.m. on ESPN, Boise State will be at Washington State. For Boise State, we're going to look at a couple of skill players. Number 1, senior wide receiver Cedric Wilson, and number 88, senior tight end Jake Rowe. For Washington State, on their defense, which is not something you would generally think of when you think of a Mike Leach team, is a defensive player, and we're going to look at their offense. We're going to see Luke Falk. I've seen Luke Falk a lot. I wrote him up earlier this summer. I think I did. I don't know, maybe I did. But anyway, number 50, junior edge rusher Hercules Mataafa is a guy to look for the Cougs. 9:30 p.m. on ESPNU, Houston will be at Arizona. Houston has not played a game yet. Their game last week against Texas San Antonio was canceled. Not postponed, just canceled. They're going to try to make it up in future years, but it ain't happening in 2017. So that game's at 9:30 on ESPNU. For Houston, look for wide receivers, number 88, senior Stephen Dunbar, and number 15, senior Linnell Bonner. For Arizona, they'll tasked with stopping them will be number 9, senior corner Dane Cruikshank. So look for that. That's going to do it for tonight's edition here of the Cheat Meal. As always, follow me on Twitter at Deep Fried Draft. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Deep Fried Draft. Search YouTube, Deep Fried Draft, Cheat Meal, Brian Bosarge. You're going to find it all there. Click subscribe so you'll be notified whenever I post these videos. Also, like I said earlier, our weekly review series, week review will now be done on the bumpers.fm app. You can download that in the App Store. And then also click subscribe there, and you'll be notified anytime that I post a podcast to there. So, and also check deepfrieddraft.com weekly for updates there. So that's going to do it. To get to some more football this week. See you then. Later.